So, do you have a small pile of pedals and you're wondering what's the best order to put them in? Well, today we're here to help you with that. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are, folks. My name is Kevin Doe here with Equipboard, and today we're talking signal chains. So if you've been floating around guitar videos, guitar message boards, guitar chat, guitar this, guitar that, you've probably heard terms like series, parallel, four-cable method, wet, dry, wet, dry, wet. All of these are various signal chains that you can implement in your rig in order to achieve guitar tone heaven. However, if this is something that you are new to, especially new to the use of pedals and pedal order, there is one tried and true way to go about it, and that is with a series signal chain. A series signal chain meaning that your pedals are wired one and two to the next, your guitar at one end, your amplifier at the other. Now, if you have a few pedals and a nice clean amplifier, it is very easy to build a very simple signal chain that will get you a wide variety of tones, allowing you to cover a number of different styles, whether at rehearsal, in the studio, or on a gig. There are also different concepts of pedal order which have stood the test of time, allowing you to get the sounds that you've heard on several records or in several concerts. And today we are going to demonstrate a very simple series signal chain that only uses a few pedals, but can get you through a number of different musical situations. And for those of you who are just starting off with all of this, before diving into the world of a whole bunch of other different routing options, be it four-cable method, parallel effects, wet, dry, wet, etc., it's always good to start with the basics and get a grasp on them. That will allow you to get used to dialing in sounds and help you plan more sophisticated and complex rigs down the road. And for this video, I'll be doing things a bit more differently than I do in your typical Equipboard YouTube video, in that I will be using complete digital emulations of the pedals in question, as well as the amplifier. I will be running my guitar into my recording interface using the TH-U Overloud Slate Edition guitar emulation plugin. For me personally, I find it's one of the best sounding guitar plugins available on the market. And secondly, you are able to build a signal chain using emulations of popular pedals. Doing this digitally will also allow me to quickly move things around in the signal chain to show you how different pedals affect one another, whether they come before one another or after one another. So let's head on over to the computer and go have a listen. All right, sitting here at my workstation with my trusty and beautiful Fender Noventa Telecaster, single P90 pickup. Love this guitar. And right now I have Overloud's TH-U Slate Edition loaded up. And as you can see here, I have this lovely signal path set up. A very simple one with my recommended pedal order. Now for this particular signal chain, this is one where we're going to assume that all of your effects and gain and time, space, tone shaping, everything is going to be done via pedals, and you're going into a clean amplifier just to make everything at the end louder. So on the amp side of things, I am using their Darkface 65 amp emulation with matching cabinet, both of them looking rather dapper. The Darkface is an obvious take on the 1965 Blackface Fender Deluxe amplifiers, a favorite amp of mine. Those of you who follow the videos know that the UA Dream 65 is my amp emulator of choice, which is again based on a 65 Deluxe Reverb. And this one here also sounds just lovely, even on its own. Sounds fantastic. Now, when we are talking about signal chains, I see a signal chain basically being handled in three different parts: pre-gain, gain, and post-gain. Pre-gain is where you're going to throw all your tone shaping elements or tone manipulating elements, the things that are really going to directly affect your guitar's signal. So this is the part where you would put wah pedals, compressor pedals, EQ pedals, if you have one. It is also in this spot where you're going to put pedals that really just want to see guitar and nothing else going into it. So this is where you're going to put your sort of buffer unfriendly pedals. most notably classic fuzz circuits like tone benders, fuzz faces, big muffs, tend to not play very well with buffered pedals in front of them. So typically these pedals are the first things that are going to go into the chain. This would also be the part of the signal path where you would put a tuner. And especially if you have a buffered tuner, I would say you would put that right after any buffer unfriendly pedals. In the gain section, this is where you're going to put all your overdrive, distortion, and boost pedals. Generally ordered lightest as far as saturation goes, all the way to dirtiest. And this also allows you to stack things rather easily, and I will demonstrate that once we get to that part. After that, in the post-gain section, this is where you are going to put your modulation pedals, your delay pedals, your reverb pedals, anything that gives you a sense of movement, texture, space. Generally, you would put these after your gain pedals. Now, of course, these are not hard and fast rules, but with this particular signal chain and pedal order, you will be able to cover a lot of ground if you're a gigging musician. And if you're somebody who's starting out, it'll give you a very good sampling of your typical guitar tones. This is a great place to start things off as you go about messing about with pedal and pedal order. Start with this and then start moving things around. Flavor things to taste as you would like them. Try different things. The important thing to remember is that whatever pedal you have in front of another is going to affect the pedal coming after. So these are the cases where if you have, let's say, a phaser pedal and a distortion pedal, what do you want to do? Do you want to distort your phaser sound? Or do you want to phase your distortion sound? If you want to distort your phase, well, then the distortion pedal would come first. If you want to phase your distortion sound, well, the phaser would come first. So if you look at it in these terms, this will help you decide for yourself where you want pedals to sit. But let's just get to this very simple signal chain. Once again, great place to start. So these are the first three pedals in my signal chain, and this is in the pre-gain section. Now, one important thing to point out, the difference between this and physical pedals, is that the signal flow with this software emulation goes from left to right. Whereas typically with pedals, the signal flow goes from right to left. So a little bit backwards, but it's okay. We'll manage. So the first thing I have here, I have a fuzz. And again, fuzz pedals tend to be very buffer unfriendly. So I'm going to have this first in the chain. So this pedal here, the fuzz race, kind of rhymes with fuzz face. If we throw that on, we get a lovely fuzz tone to start things off. So guitar on its own, let's turn on the fuzz. And what's nice about classic fuzz circuits, you can probably leave this on all the time if you want, because they clean up rather well. A lot of those Hendrix-y clean tones that you heard was typically a guitar with the volume knob turned down and the fuzz pedal was still on. So if I roll back if I have it volume here, full tilt, very distorted. If I roll things back, still get a nice clean tone. That's not super quiet, but it cleans up very nicely. And typically after the fuzz, that's where I'm going to put a wah pedal. If I didn't have a fuzz pedal, I would typically put the wah first in my chain. Now, a wah is basically a guitar's tone control, souped up and thrown into a rocker pedal. But these work particularly well, at least to my ear, before all the gain. So before your distortion or overdrive. The wah sound is much more articulate and it's cleaner. So, throw on a wah here. I'll be controlling this with my mouse, which will be a little bit different than controlling it with my foot, but alas. Nice and clean. Let's see if I throw in a little bit of overdrive. You still get a nice articulate wah sound. After distortion, I'll show this to you in a second. After distortion, it tends to get a little bit more gnarly and a little bit less articulate, at least to my ears, but it might be something you prefer. Typically, the last thing in the pregame section I like to throw on would be a compressor. So I have this RSS compressor here, which is a clone of a classic Ross compressor. You could use these to really squash the signal and make everything nice, even, make it very punchy. A lot of people will tend to use these as a boost pedal as well, with a little bit of light compression just to even things out, while cranking up the level to further push drive pedals or your amplifier. But this for me right here is the best spot for a compressor pedal. So, guitar without, with it on. You can hear it, man, the sustain, to quote old Nigel Tufnell. But that's it. Anything tone shaping, this is probably where I would put it. Now, moving on to my gain section, represented by these three pedals here. This is where distortions, overdrives, boost pedals are going to live. Now, one thing I will point out before going further is you'll notice here I have a 7-band graphic EQ. This is a copy of the Boss GE7 pedal, which is also a fantastic clean boost besides a tone shaping tool. And we can use this pedal here for a couple of reasons. A very versatile pedal, highly recommended that you do get one. Let's say you have a couple of guitars. You have your main guitar and maybe a secondary guitar. Let's say the secondary guitar, the output of the pickups is a little less hot than your main one, and there's a couple of little funny frequency things. Well, I would put this pedal here before my gain. And what this will allow me to do is even out both guitars. So if the guitar is a little bit quieter, you have a level control, you can always goose up the volume a little bit. If it's too bright, you can shave off some of that top end, maybe bump the mids a little bit. But it makes a great tone shaping tool before you hit your distortion. So without and with. Now, changes are subtle, but we can really push it and have this nice. Let's turn it off. But right there, it helps you shape the sound of the guitar before you hit the drive pedals. And it's also one of the best clean boost pedals you can find. Along with other different pedals, there's a bunch of clean boosts out there, such as the Keeley Katana. You have the TC Electronic Spark pedal, which was one of my favorites. But the GE7 serves the same purpose, because all a clean boost really does is just supposed to add volume. It's not really supposed to color your sound. Some coloration may happen. You can really use that level control here and nothing else to either boost your volume for solos or to push your drive pedals even further. I'll demonstrate that in a few seconds. Right now, I'm going to reset the G7, put it back to where I had it. And now we are going to talk about the gain section. Okay, this is where all your distortion is going to live. And again, I like to set my pedal order for going from lightest amount of distortion to most amount of distortion, which also allows you to stack things, at least in a much more pleasing way to my ear. So on the distortion side, we have this blue BD2 pedal. So, tell me you're a Boss blues driver without telling me you're a blues driver. As well as this Distort Plus, which is a copy of the MXR Distortion Plus, famously used by Randy Rhoads. I got the BD2 set to my light overdrive, and the Distort Plus to a bit of a thicker, heavier drive. So let's turn these on, see what happens. Starting with the BD2, again, guitar on its own. Gonna turn on the BD2. A little more drive. Then, I always like to have two sources of distortion on my boards, just for flavor and variety and stacking. So this Distort Plus, this is going to be the heavier distortion. So when we talk about stacking distortion pedals, we basically do that so that we can increase the amount of overall gain that we can get out of our signal as opposed to just using one pedal. So BD2 by itself, Distort Plus by itself. How about both? Now we can even push that even further with the graphic EQ. Two ways. We can use this as an additional stacking pedal to boost these pedals even further. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the 7 bands flat, but I'm going to goose up the gain quite a bit with the level control. And what's going to happen is that when I kick this on, it's going to pump more signal into the overdrive and distortion pedals, pushing them to clip a lot more than what they're set at. So guitar by itself, BD2, and now we're going to push that with the GEQ. Some nice additional gristle right there. Same thing with the Distort Plus. Turn it on. Let's add that 7 band as a clean boost. Now let's turn on all 3. So right there, just with a couple of pedals, especially if you just have an overdrive and a distortion pedal in that gain section, you already have access to 3 different gain stages right there. It's almost like having a 4-channel amplifier. Clean, overdrive, distortion, stacked. So right away with those 2 pedals in the clean amplifier, lots of tonal possibilities right there. Now, the 7-band EQ, again, set as a clean boost, for me serves another purpose when you put it after your drive pedals. What this does is that this allows you to boost your signal for solos to cut above the band. What happens is that if we use it to further push our overdrive and distortion, so we're putting it before those, we'll get a bump in volume, but it won't be significant because what happens is that the pedals will take such a pounding that they'll run out of headroom as far as volume goes. And all that they will do is just further distort and compress. So while we're getting gobs more gain, we are not necessarily getting that extra push we need in volume. So using this or any other clean boost after your distortions, we're able to add that headroom for soloing without adding any additional gain. So what happens is that we're not going to be adding more distortion to these pedals, but we're going to make whatever tone this creates louder, allowing us to cut above the band. Now, there's also the possibility of adding a bit more saturation because we will be hitting our amplifier with a hotter signal, maybe causing the preamp to distort a bit there. But we might have just that additional headroom to help us boost volume. So let's just say I have the overdrive on. It's solo time. Let's goose that up quite a bit. And we'll switch it on. We'll hear the difference without. With it. So once again, great way of adding volume without necessarily adding more saturation. So now let's look at the third part of our signal chain and pedal order, which is where we put time-based effects, your delays, your modulations, and your reverbs. So what I have here is I have the D delay, which is a recreation of the Boss Digital delay, a 9.0 phaser, which is an MXR Phase 90, with a couple of additional knobs. The Phase 90 only has 1. They put 3 on this one. And we also have the D-Verb, which is a recreation of the Boss Digital reverb pedal. Now for me, this is my ideal order, putting delay first, followed by my modulation, and then into reverb. Delay to create the echoes, my modulation to modulate everything from the guitar signal and the echoes all at the same swirl, and I'll talk again about that in a second. And I finally like to end with my reverb to sort of have the guitar sound like it's in a room, the whole thing. Okay, so let's start with the delay. And a digital one is a very versatile one in that it can do everything from slap echo all the way to very, very, very long repeat times, as compared to, say, tape and analog delay, which have shorter repeat times. The big difference between digital and analog delay is that digital retains the fidelity throughout the repeats, while with analog and tape delay, there is a bit of a degradation in the signal, just sort of like the repeats sound warmer as they go. So, a little bit of delay to create some space. What we can do is just reduce the time and the repeats, and we have instant slap. And even with that, if I turn the effect level down, kind of acts like a short room reverb, kind of like a room slap. Now on the modulation side, I decided to go with a phaser because it's a very pronounced effect. And again, I like to put all my modulation effects, so this includes phaser, flanger, chorus, tremolo, all of that after the distortion section, after the gain stage. Works nice with clean. If I add distortion to the works, different than, let's say, I take my phaser. Let's zoom out a little bit. Just make this. If I put it before the distortion, it still is it's still an interesting sound, but it's a different one. Very different than, say, putting it after distortion. I'm just going to put it back. I find the effect is a bit more pronounced. However, it depends on you. If you're a fan of old Van Halen records, particularly Van Halen 1, old Eddie used to use an MXR Phase 90 set really, really, really slow, basically at the lowest setting, and would put that in front of his Marshall. And that's how we get that little swirly sound at the end of Eruption and during some other solos as well. If you're a fan of that sort of thing, put it before the distortion. The same thing would go with chorus and flange effects. If you're a fan of the older sounds, back before they had effects loops and all the other routing options where everything would be thrown in front of a distorted amplifier, then put all those pedals before your gain. If you're a bit more of a fan of the modern thing, put it after the gain. But go with what works best for you. Now, I also pointed out that I like to put my modulation after my delay. The reason for this is that when you use modulation before delay, the sweep of the modulation gets printed onto the repeats, and there's no real change. Whereas if you put it after delay, your guitar signal and the repeats are continually modulated, so the swirl of it continues throughout the delay trails. So I'll just show you what I mean. So I'm going to put this before, switch them around, and my delay here. I'll turn the effect up so that you can hear it clearly. And we're going to turn on the phaser. So you hear that modulation gets printed on the repeat, so there's no change in the swirl. It's just whatever swirl the pedal heard, that's what's going to spit out. However, if I put it afterwards, what happens is that the repeats will now get swirly as well. Which is a sound that I prefer, whether it be with phaser, flanger, chorus, tremolo, any modulation effect. I like it after delay. so that everything gets a little bit of that phasey love. You know what I mean? Now, the final thing that I like to put in my chain is the reverb. And again, reverb, nice sense of room, space. Let's turn the distortion off. Now, with just these few pedals, we're able to get a lot of different sounds, a lot of different tones that'll get you through a lot of different situations, whether you're at a rehearsal, whether you're at a gig, whether you're just practicing and you want to step on stuff just to make things interesting. So again, clean sound, just the amp by itself. Let's say you got a bit of a blues solo that you want to do. So I'm going to turn on the blues driver and let's add a little reverb. We're going to shorten the time. A little less wet. You just want to have some bluesy rhythm, just the overdrive. Want to do some 80s style riffing, a little bit of reverb and a little bit of distortion goes a long way. Great rock rhythm right there. Want to do a little Hendrix-y thing? Keep the reverb on. Let's turn on some phaser and some fuzz. Add. Let's turn that phaser down. If you got a foot to operate a wah pedal, let's add some wah. You want to play some country rhythm? Let's turn on the delay. Let's cut the time, cut the repeats. We really want a little slap back. Turn this down. We just want it nice and light. That's a little too much. Repeats down a bit more. There we go. Turn on some compression. A little bit of a country solo. Let's just add some clean boost just to turn things up. Let's go 70s country. Let's add some phaser. Say we want a big rock solo with a lot of space. Well, let's turn on some reverb. That's nice. Let's add some delay. Maybe one repeat. Let's make it a little bit. Right about there. Sounds good. We'll just turn it down. Just we want to a little distortion. Let's pump up the gain a little bit more. Let's add that overdrive. How about some big ambient shoegaze music? For those of you who are a fan of shoegaze music, I'll turn that reverb on. We are just going to dime it. Same thing with our delay. And let's throw some fuzz on there. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Here we go. It don't really get bigger than that, eh? All right, let's do some clean ambience. So compressor on. Going to use my graphic EQ. I'm going to shave off some low end. Maybe just bump the mid-range a little bit just to get a different sound. Delays on, nice and long. Going to add some repeats. Reverb is nice and wet. So there you go. Just a few simple pedals in the proper order can give you a plethora of different possibilities. Now, as I say, also use this as a jumping off point just to get you going. And then from there, decide what you prefer and go ahead and mess around with different pedal orders to see what happens. You know, let's try that for fun. I'm going to change things around here a little bit. Let's say I'm going to flip my gain stages here. So my distortion is going to go in to my overdrive. I'm going to flatten out the EQ, just use it as a boost, but we're going to hear the difference as to what happens if we distort the overdrive as opposed to adding some overdrive to the distortion. So guitar by itself, add some overdrive, throw distortion on top of that. Let's push it harder. That gets us into some really fuzzy territory. Or let's go a little hog wild. Why not? Let's take our reverb, nice long reverb, and we're going to throw it into our gain stages just to see what happens. It's all about having fun. So turn on the reverb. Nice and wet. Let's distort that reverb. Now let's phase the whole thing. Phasers last. So, go ahead, plug some stuff in and go have some fun. So, if you've enjoyed this video, why not give it a like? Do share it with your guitar pedal and signal chain loving friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you are subscribed or have just subscribed, don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you are notified of new videos the second they become available. Once again, for Equipboard, my name is Kevin Doe. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Now go grab your pedals and start plugging stuff in.